Today, I'm going to explain an action movie called Go for Broke. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The movie opens with a boat drifting in the middle of the ocean, where we meet our protagonist, Zhang Yao. After retiring from the military, Zhang is taken up fishing alongside his army buddies to support his family. The scene then cuts to 7 months later, when he finally returns to his home. To his dismay, his restaurant is locked, and his wife is nowhere to be found. A neighbor then informs Zhang that his wife has become a drug addict and is now living under a bridge alongside others like her. She lives with the trolls and Anthony Cheetahs now. Upon hearing this, a shocked Zhang immediately rushes there and finds his wife in a terrible state. A flashback reveals that a few months prior, some thugs had arrived at her restaurant and tricked her into drinking alcohol laced with heroin. She became addicted after that and eventually sold everything she owned just to buy more drugs. One day, while under the influence, she even abandoned her daughter alone on the street. The child was unfortunately struck by a truck and killed. Returning to the present, the woman is overcome with guilt and climbs to a railing to end her life. A distraught Zhang goes after her and pleads with her not to go through with it. He assures her that he'll take her to rehab and she can still recover and live a normal life. However, his wife has given up hope and ends up unaliving herself, leaving Zhang devastated. The scene then cuts to 2 years later, when a police officer named Andu conducts a raid on a drug trafficking hideout. He manages to seize a large number of drug packages and arrests the junkies, but suddenly a man arrives to take the goods. He insists that only 2 packages are required for evidence because this batch belongs to Mukun, the city's biggest drug kingpin. Although Andu is frustrated by this, he has no choice but to agree. We are then introduced to Mukun. He turns out to be an old man, struggling with poor health. He is visited by his right-hand man, Heita, who informs him about Mukun's illegitimate son, Suang. According to Heita, Suang is currently imprisoned in the Philippines and is a highly dangerous convict. After his mother died, he grew up on the streets and became a gang leader at a young age. Heita reveals that Suang has committed countless murders and doesn't even hesitate to eat people. Despite the heinous crimes committed by his son, Mukun remains unfazed. He states that he will not live much longer and wishes to make amends for his past mistakes. The old man then urges Heita to bring Suang to him using whatever means necessary. In the following scene, we see Suang sleeping peacefully in his prison cell. Moments later, several guards charge in and begin attacking him all at once. After the criminal finally passes away, we see our protagonist, Zhang Yao, entering the room. He then puts on Suang's uniform and makes several cuts on his face to make himself look like him. The next morning, Zhang Yao, now under the identity of Suang, is let out of the prison. He heads to the city on a ship, and along the way, he is greeted by Andu. It turns out that the police officer has hired Zhang to impersonate Suang so that they can take down Mukun and his operation. Zhang also seeks retribution for what happened to his wife and daughter, whose lives were ruined by drugs. Therefore, Andu instructs him to adopt the role of Suang and gain the old man's trust to dismantle his empire. Later, we see Mukun in a meeting with his trusted business partner, Pei, who is also a chief police commissioner. They talk about Suang and express excitement about his return. Just then, Andu arrives at the house, and we learn that he is Pei's nephew. He comes across Pei's young mistress, Nancy, who informs him that the old men are meeting. Andu notices bruises on her and asks if his uncle hurt her again. However, she denies it, claiming it was her fault for saying the wrong thing. This makes Andu feel very bad, and it's clear that he has feelings for her. Sometime later, Zhang arrives at the house and acts like a madman who fears nothing. He immediately engages in a fight with one of Heita's henchmen and brutally beats him up. The commotion is eventually stopped by Mukun, who is overjoyed to see his long-lost son. He becomes emotional and embraces Zhang. However, despite the heartfelt moment, Mukun still needs to be sure that this man is his son, so he secretly takes some of Zhang's blood and sends it for a DNA test. In the evening, Mukun holds a grand party to celebrate Suang's return. He also receives the forged DNA test results and is relieved to know that the man is indeed his son. After that, Mukun heads to the stage and introduces Zhang to everyone as his long-lost son. He even gives his Buddha necklace as as a sign that Suang will be his business's successor. The next day, Zhang immediately gets to work and starts handling his fake dad's business. He first takes on the task of locating a drug dealer named Bale, who had stolen from their batch a few weeks prior. Zhang gathers a few henchmen and soon arrives at a dark and decaying building filled with thugs. He eventually comes across their leader, Bale, but before he can do anything, several thugs attack him. However, the former soldier defeats them with ease and manages to kill every one of them. He then brutally beats Bale and is about to shoot him to death. However, Bale begins crying and begging for his life, saying he is willing to do anything for him. Shortly after, Zhang returns to the house and proudly presents Bale and the stolen goods to Makun. The old man is overjoyed because not only did his son return the drugs, but he also forced their enemies to submit. Makun then finally trusts Zhang with his business affairs and sends him to inspect the drug production facility. Over the next few days, Zhang, along with Bale, goes to inspect their factories across the country. He then implements various strategies to improve their operations, resulting in a significant increase in profit. Days later, Zhang meets with Andu and gives him the locations of all their factories and shipping routes. However, the officer states that this information is not enough. He adds that Mukun has a private vault containing a large amount of black money and information about bribed officials. He also says that Mukun is powerful because of his partnership with Anpei and urges Zhang to stage a drama that will incite a war between the two of them. That evening, Zhang meets with Anpei for dinner and informs him that he will now only receive 10% of the profit rather than the current 40%. This obviously enrages the old man, who claims that he follows Makun's orders and not anyone else's, but Zhang calmly shows him a video in which Anpei is seen killing someone. He threatens to expose it, and the commissioner responds by arresting him and locking him in a prison cell. In the evening, Bale and his men arrive at the police station and attack the place with Molotov cocktails and firearms. Meanwhile, Anpei is on his way home when he receives the news and becomes frustrated. He immediately calls Mukun to inform him of his son's actions, which leads to an argument between them. Unfortunately, the argument stresses Mukun so much that he begins to get increasingly sick. Anpei's car is soon hit by a bomb, sending it off course and crashing into a drain. Elsewhere, Andu frees Zhang from his cell and informs him that there's been a change of plans. Mukun is about to die, so Zhang must go to him right away to obtain the password and location of the vault. Later, Zhang approaches the dying Mukun, who apologizes for abandoning him and his mother many years ago. He then reveals the vault's location and informs Zhang that the password is in the Buddha necklace. Upon hearing this, a satisfied Zhang finally tells Mukun that he is not his son and that the real Suang is dead. This leaves the old man stunned, but he passes away before he can say a word. Next, Zhang heads to the living room and announces that the old man is dead. The lawyer then begins reading Makun's will, which states that the next chairman will be Suang and that he will inherit everything that belonged to his dad. But this doesn't sit well with Haetak. Andy angrily shoots the lawyer. He shows his true colors and declares that he should be the next chairman, since he has been with Makun for years. Haetak then starts shooting everyone who doesn't side with him, creating utter chaos in the house. Zhang, Andu, and Bale team up to fight against him. However, due to the overwhelming number of enemies, the three decide to retreat and throw a bomb at the house. Most of the henchmen die in the process, but unexpectedly, Haetak is still alive. He then begins attacking Zhang, but Andu arrives just in time to intervene. He drives his car straight at Haetak and slams him into a statue. The force of the impact causes the statue to collapse and crushes Haetak to his death. After the chaos is over, Zhang informs Andu of the vault's location and hands him the necklace, which contains the password. But as soon as he does so, Bale points a gun at Zhang, and Andu's expression turns sinister. It is then revealed that Andu is a crooked cop who has been plotting to take over Mukun's empire for a long time, but he never had the opportunity until Mukun requested his help in finding his son. He chose Zhang for the job because he was an exceptional soldier whose family had been destroyed by drugs. Andu then plotted the entire scheme to gain power, and it turns out that Bale is also his accomplice. However, the corrupt cop doesn't immediately kill Zhang because he still needs him for the next mission. He reveals that he murdered Anpei earlier tonight and smeared Zhang's fingerprints on the scene. Now, Andu plans to become a hero by arresting Suang, the notorious drug dealer who killed the chief of the police commissioner. After arresting him, Andu exposes Mukun's drug operation in front of a press conference. In the following days, he uses his authority to launch a massive cleanup campaign in the city. He destroys all of Mukun's production sites by setting fire to the factories. He even kills kills many of the workers in the process, most of whom are just poor, helpless people. After dismantling the entire drug mafia, Andu is praised by his department and even promoted to chief police commissioner. However, unbeknownst to them, the man has directed Bale to hide the drug packages so he can run his own secret business. In the next scene, Andu finally enters Mukund's secret vault and is surprised to discover a room containing a total of $2 billion in cash. This discovery immensely pleases him, and he begins plotting the next phase of his plan. Days later, Andu holds a memorial ceremony for Mukund and Enpai in the same location. The event generates a lot of media attention because no one knew the two were business partners. It turns out that Andu has invited all of the deceased's accomplices to the ceremony. He intends to bomb the entire funeral hall and kill everyone at once to eliminate any competition. Soon, the funeral begins, and Andu observes from a nearby building where the vault is kept. He has also brought Zhang, as he intends to blame him for what is about to happen. Back at the funeral, Nancy steps onto the stage and greets the guests. She then pulls back a curtain behind her, revealing massive drug stashes and numerous photos of victims whose lives have been destroyed by addiction. This shocks everyone, but before they can react, Nancy exits through the back door and locks it, trapping everyone inside the hall. She later meets up with Bale, and the two exchange an emotional hug. Moments later, Andu detonates the explosive device, which kills everyone inside the funeral hall. However, out of nowhere, the vault containing $2 billion also explodes behind him, leaving him utterly stunned. The furious officer quickly realizes that this is all Zhang's doing. Through a flashback, we learn that Nancy was the daughter of an honest police commander who dedicated his life to fighting drugs. She worked as a doctor in a rehab, where she met Bale's younger sister, who was struggling with addiction. Nancy did everything she could to help the girl, and the young woman was eventually released from the facility. However, her recovery was short-lived, as she soon relapsed and ultimately ended her own life. On the other hand, Nancy's father was also killed by Mukund's gang since the commissioner was interfering with their business. This is when she ran into Bale, who was also grieving for his sister. They then went together to a shelter under the bridge, where addicts' families lived in appalling conditions. One day, some drug dealers attacked the shelter and demanded money from the addicts. Nancy and Bale tried their best to intervene, but were overpowered. Just when things seemed hopeless, Zhang appeared and saved the day by brutally beating the dealers and driving them out. From this incident, the trio decided to work together and seek revenge on those who had caused so many families to live in misery. Nancy first approached Enpai and used her charm to seduce him and gather inside info. She then turned her attention to Andu, knowing that he had a deep resentment for his uncle. Next, Bale pretended to be a drug dealer and deliberately appeared during one of Andu's raids. Zhang then made his appearance when he found out Andu was looking for someone to impersonate Sue. In this way, the three of them purposefully became Andu's pawns with their own hidden motives. In the present, Andu appreciates the brilliant plan with an evil smile. However, he declares that nothing can stop him from becoming the next drug lord. He immediately orders his men to assassinate Bale and Nancy, who are then shot several times. But before dying, Nancy activates the explosive in her arm, causing all the henchmen to die instantly. An enraged Andu then retaliates by shooting Zhang and throwing him off the building. In the aftermath, Andu begins rejoicing, believing he has finally won, but he is taken aback when he notices a camera recording him from a distance. It turns out that everything Andu has done today has been live broadcast on city television by Zhang's friends. After witnessing the entire event, the central police chief orders a fully armed team to arrest Andu. The corrupt cop tries his best to resist arrest, but is eventually overpowered and shot to death. The movie then concludes when the government finally notices the struggling people living under the bridge and offers them help. Subscribe for more videos like this.